going into Toldagor. Take it away, guys.
All right. We're going to be having Paint for Femme squaring up against Gromnak Waiting Room as the early shroud comes out as both of these guys start heading into the middle of the room. And see, to the side of Gromnak Waiting Room, they're going to be getting everybody together and grabbing all of the crabs and some of the parasites together. Same thing on the side of Paint for Femme, but they do end up pulling Sand Queen, both teams.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Unholy DK and how they handle the explosive. So the pulls are a little bit Paint for Femme went for a smaller pool since they don't have the Unholy DK and make sure to keep the explosives low. But it looks like Gromnak Waiting Room did do a really good job killing all the explosives and the mobs in time.
Yeah, just be able to see how quickly that they get decimated. You see in the early upheaval going on to Zmach, and I'm surprised that he didn't end up trying to go for. Oh, he did actually say Fort Brew. Okay, thankfully because he had Diffuse ready for all of the bursting at the very beginning. He did have Fort Brew later on, so he didn't have to worry about that too much. But now they're going to have a lot of bursting as they're killing off all of these parasites. So a lot more split damage, and it's always interesting to see how much extra pressure goes onto these guys when they're forcing such larger pulls and forcing so much extra damage onto the group by doing these.
Right, that 5 stack of bursting during that sandstorm was a bit scary, but Sumak was able to heal through it, with no problem. And it looks like Paint for Femme is killing the boss a
Done.
little bit slower.
Oh, sorry,
But,
I'm looking at Gromnak side. My bad.
right, so that's the power of having that unholy DK and getting all that their 30 stack of Fester Might and being able to kill that boss fast.
Most definitely. And I think it was on the side of what was it, Ricky, who had the just most massive circle from his Eye of
Right.
Corruption I'd ever seen.
Yeah,
look at
that's
this.
huge.
This is like at least 30 yards diameter onto that one. They do get it done a little bit later, but if I'm not mistaken, I do think that they have a bit more in the way of enemy forces taken care of. They did take some extra time to start clearing out some of the trash early on.
It does look like they might be playing that obelisk, get rid of that awakened mob, while Gromnak Waiting Room did run up and get the Shadow Meld, so they did not play the obelisk.
Do you guys see that weak aura on the Paint for Femme side? Ricky's muscle bra thing? The thing from beyond?
Oh, I didn't even end up seeing it. I'm just so enraptured by his entire circle. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that in the bottom left there. You are seeing Gromnak again moving forward. They got a slight lead right now, but also like we mentioned, the enemy forces is a bit uneven as Paint for Femme's opting to take care of all the crocolisks in the basement, while Gromnak is making up some extra trash. But they do end up having 2 deaths as they were just rolling the bursting. So Divine and Wolf Disco start going down here. It was a bit too much spread healing for Zmach to be able to recover. And that's one of the things with some of these larger pulls is even with the Rising Mist buffs that we saw with 8.3, where you're constantly getting excellent Renewing Mist extensions or even enveloping extensions, because you're pulling so large and you're incentivized so heavily just to spin everything down, you're not generating enough Rising Sun Kicks to get those extensions. And when bursting starts going off, you're not having 4 or 5 Renewing Mists out at a time to heal everybody. You have to kind of jump around, and sometimes you'll just lose a couple people like you saw just there.
Right, and we do see them take a bit of time to unlock the cages for the buffs, so they can unlock the cages to where the neutral mobs are, to get the raid buffs, like attack power or health or intellect, and they do that before entering the obelisk because once you're inside that realm, you won't get the buff unless you die and then respawn. So they made sure to stay out and get the buffs and then go in the obelisk to do the Blood of the Corruptor. Because you don't want to do this Blood of the Corruptor with the last boss in Toragor where you can't really move, otherwise you get stunned, and otherwise you'll just be sitting in this defiled ground the whole time. So it is a safe play.
Yeah, having that progressive just run with the rest of the team, trying to be able to cleave down a lot of the eye stalks has always been so messy and Toldagor. I mean, they do a good job trying to make sure that they're cleaving as evenly as they can, but even then you start seeing all the extra damage piling up onto everybody because this Blood of the Corruptor just continues.
Right, and it looks like they kill it just as they enter floor with the second boss. And curious how they do this pull. We've seen other teams try to do the whole floor all at once, but with explosive and bursting, we probably won't see that here because the neutrals on this floor also burst. So if you accidentally grab too many of those, you could wipe the team pretty fast.
Yeah, I like it, how they're just clearing everything out, and they do seem to be taking quite a bit more time. As you mentioned previously, they're probably not as practiced on this dungeon because they just don't have the incentive to really do it, since they're just not expecting it. But thus far, they've been kind of playing it similar to what we've seen out of Live Key. You do see how Jess Hallis does get pulled. They line of sight everything, so they don't have to worry about the explosives. And I'm sure you could tell. I'm sure you could talk about it from the times of Method NA competing in Toldegor. Having to mess around with explosives and getting these pulls just right can be such a pain.
Right. So one of the difficulties with pulling the C speakers with Jess is you're using kicks on Jess to stop the fears, and you need to stop the watery domes. Otherwise, the watery domes keep going off, like you see here, and Divine dropping really low.
Ooh.
So if you want to save interrupts for Jess, you need to use like some kind of disrupt on the C speakers to stop their watery domes because they are not playing Horde. They don't have the Arcane Torrent for safety to just mass dispel the watery domes. So they have to kill the C speakers here before the new ones come. So we see all of the mobs running to them since Jess, when he runs through them, he will aggro them as he comes back to this entrance.
Yeah, I like that they're taking the time and they're not kicking Jets just yet, and they're allowing themselves to just kill all these ads really quickly. But you are seeing tons of pressure going on to the group as everyone's extremely low. Eugene's mocking really low on mana at this point as well, as he's just trying to work to get everybody topped off as quickly as he can. But he is almost completely at this point. He's just trying to be able to sustain everybody. But thankfully, they don't have to deal with Jess at the moment. I think they're just going to end up burning down Bobby and trying to take care of all the trash first.
Right. We may see him in trouble here when the rest of this trash dies and gives him that huge bursting stack. We'll see if DPS can control it, and they have to deal with their Eye of Corruptions, with the corruption that they're running.
Yeah, with that, there's no way to be able to get out of it. I mean, at this point, they're just going to be using their legendary cloak effects just to be able to try to immune it. But two guys going down, Zmok and a Shine going down as well. He gets up, he tries to start topping off the tank, but limited mana at his disposal. It looks like they're just going to be going in for the reset, get a Shine rezzed up, and then just try it again. That's incredibly risky for them. While Pain for Femme is around 68% on the boss, it looks like this is their opportunity to start pulling ahead.
Right. It looks like a couple of them got hit by Bobby, Jess's brother's fear. So they didn't line of sight that. And then they got killed by maybe explosive out there as well.
Yeah, at this point, you are seeing Pain for Femme just getting into that corner once again. They do have a couple of the scallywags right here, so they'll have to watch for the incoming damage. But thankfully, they're not dealing with. See, they have just like one arsonist rather than like the 3 or 4 that you saw on the side of Gromnak waiting room, dealing with everything at once.
Right. So if Jess is the one that frees the raiders from the cells, then they won't burst. But if Paint for Femme open the cells and aggro the raiders before they pull Jess, then they will burst and also give you count. But if they came as part of the boss event, then you don't get count, and then they count as a boss mob, then they don't give you the bursting.
I'm seeing only a limited number of the buffs from each team. It looks like that they maybe just opened 2 of the gates maximum.
Yeah, so it looks
2,
like they
3.
at least got the attack power one and the stamina one, so they at least got the important ones. They don't really care about their healers on these teams. So
all right.
they got the damage and they got their health.
That's all they need. They don't care about the healers or mana. I mean, the wisdom is very poor as well. I mean, the mana return can be pretty nice for a lot of the mana hungry Mistweavers with Way of the Crane, but outside of that, the health return has been usually pretty low for those guys. So Pain for Femme does take down Jess Hallis, and they're moving on, and they do get the Shroud up if they pass by that obelisk to be taken care of later.
That is interesting that they skipped the fear awakened mob, and having the fear on the last boss of this dungeon could be very difficult. But so I'm curious to see how they will handle it.
Well, looking at it, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to turtle to get out of the fear bomb from that awakened mob. I know you're going to be able to revival. You'll have cloak. Warrior will be able to have their own immunity from it. You could also have the Mistweaver use diffuse, but diffuse will also put it directly on top. It'll spell reflect, so it'll put it directly underneath the mob itself, so it could actually fear other mobs at the same time, or other players at the same time.
Right.
So I'm curious to see how they're going to be handling that.
And they do go for a big pull, cannon pull here, pulling the trash outside of the prison, and hopefully they can line of sight the explosives, or the hunter Shella can kill the explosives from range, and using his pet just auto attacks while he's line of sighted.
And you're seeing Femme dropping very low there from the mass amount of bursting. They do handle it very well. And this is one of the interesting things of how well these teams have been able to round up bursting mobs and deal with them more rapidly is because they've used so many of their cannon shots right now. Looking at, are they just going to run, maybe try to get a shroud past or something like that, and then better organize everything together for one massive cannon before Nightcap and Valyri? But this is going to be really tough to round up.
Yeah, so they do get two imprison and a sap on those two mobs, so they will skip them. And it looks like they were waiting for some kind of cooldown while they drag these three mobs to the next two packs, and they will probably do them all together. Oh, it looks like they just shadow melded past those
Oh,
three.
okay. I was going to say, because
Okay.
it would be so difficult for them to actually deal with it otherwise. So it must have just been waiting on some of the Shadow Meld cooldowns.
Right. And now they're just gonna handle these six mobs, and I almost wonder if they're paying attention to the other team's stream since this is played online, that they'll play this Spirit Breaker Awaken mob just for safety in the last boss. Because this combined with the Fear and
They would have to run
the
this. They would
Void
have to
Weaver
do it.
could be very risky. Because
Yeah, but
on the side of
especially there's
Gromnak,
nowhere to go. Like,
right.
you not only would have to be dodging the mass AoE circle around him, but you'd also have to be making sure you're doing it while you're avoiding some of the crossfire. So maybe they just go into that a little bit later, and then they use it to skip past a couple of the early Warden mobs, then pull them back into the cannon to be able to finish everything off. Because I think they have to do all of the Wardens. They have to do all the Wardens, all the casters after this.
Yeah, so they are about 55 counts short. So the whole Warden section with the two casters gives 41 count. So I I
Oh,
think they can skip.
we just switch POVs.
Okay, so on
No,
Gromnak's team,
we're at the Gromnak.
they're doing the fear side. So
Yeah.
this is what I expect most teams to be doing. If they're playing Totogor, to do that fear mob and then do 3 with the last boss. But I guess Paint for Femme is opting to keep that guy alive. Um, and
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
see
have
what
to.
happens.
Yeah, I'm very curious to start seeing how that's going to be going down. As Pedro Fem is almost done with Knight Captain Valyri, as Gromnak waiting room is just waiting on some cooldowns, waiting on some positioning to try to grab all of these mobs in together and get a massive cannon pull. And you are seeing Paint for Fem going back. Yeah, they will be
Okay, yeah.
going back to take care of the Spirit Breaker. I do like that. Just
Yeah,
like
that
way too risky
makes sense.
otherwise. The tank
Right.
pressure.
I think having just the Spirit Breaker instead of the Fear is doable because there's not too much raid damage because you either use all of your damage and nuke down one of them, right? So you can't do both at the same time. So you either do the Spirit Breaker or the Fear Mob. Um, you can't. I can't see a team doing both on the last boss.
Yeah, that's insane. That'd be absolutely insane. Yep, and they just see them dropping it down to 25%. Looks like they're probably going to just place it right on top of the cannon and then get everything together for the last bit of trash percentage that they really need. Gromnak Waiting Room does take care of their first cannon. Does look like they're waiting on some CDs and might be doing the exact same thing that Paint for Femme did of just grabbing all of them. Okay, they're not going to Shadow Meld past. They're actually going to try a very risky pull on the side of Gromnak to try to grab all of these mobs in together from 2 different angles and rally them up.
Right. I think they just have to go for the risky play to try to catch up here to Paint for Femme. Paint for Femme is well ahead as they are about to kill the last of their trash before they head to the last boss here.
Yep, last boss is going to be quite a sight to see, especially with any of the obelisks up and this just kind of split focus that they have to be going through. And it goes to show that while Pain for Femme didn't have perfect timing as they went through this, they did a pretty good job of making sure that they exactly waited for the cooldowns and exactly waited for what they needed, because that patience really paid off on the side, because they must have been expecting Gromnak to be making some mistakes or just some really risky plays like you're seeing on their side right now as Bubble's going up and you're seeing Zmox just spamming as hard as he possibly can to try to keep the whole team alive.
Right. So, and then now we get Paint for Femme gets to the last boss. Now this last boss will be crucial because they're going to use their Bloodlust here. So if we see a full team wipe, Gromnak Waiting Room does have a chance to catch up. It looks like Zamok just got blasted by his own teammate
Ooh,
in the cannon.
betrayal. Paper Fem does end up pulling the boss, and I really am going to be hyped to see this. Void Weaver mouth here is right in their face, but they do have to deal with the fear ad as well. So let's expect to see one of the revivals coming in really early. But threat is on the Hunter. He does quickly try to drop it off, but Fem is dropping incredibly low, as well as Seb. They very much have to watch their positioning as they're going through this. They're trying to be able to deal with the Harbinger of Chaos as quickly as they can. Seeing the fears spread out here, and I don't think that they have a dispel for everybody onto this one because they already cleansed the first one. So thankfully, they didn't have any of the crossfires at the same time.
Right. And
we
we
really
do
have to watch here because the cannon's coming right at them.
And Ricky got stunned there, but luckily it was before the cannon came. And they do manage to get the fear mob down and Void Weaver mouth here, so it is just the boss left. So it looks like they're able to clean that up. While
I gotta wonder how consistent that is.
right, it looked a bit scary
terrifying.
there. And one of the benefits to having a hunter on this last boss is they can use feign death when they get targeted by the Deadeye. So they don't have to worry about that. The Demon Hunter doesn't have to worry about getting in place and using Blade Dance. He can just use Blade Dance on cooldown and doesn't have to hold it. If Demon Hunt or the Hunter has feign death available.
Yeah, it really goes to show, how well of a counter pick that this dungeon really is. I didn't really think about it until we started talking about the end boss and having to deal with emissary or lieutenants on top of it, right? The amount of coordination needed and just the practice to get the Void Weaver in, get the caster mob in quickly, have the kicks that you require very rapidly, and then start tunneling down the fear mob as well on top of it. It just goes to show their preparation as a counter pick. This was excellent.
Right, it is definitely worth the coin for them. They definitely prepared for it, and it most likely came as a surprise to Gromnak because they did limit their practice to about 4 hours whenever they practiced each day. So they probably didn't practice Total War, so it was a good pick for Pain for Fem to get that win on the board.
Yeah, most definitely. A million different things that can kill you, and you can go from having nobody take any damage whatsoever to everybody standing in saw blades and fire everywhere and having all kinds of unnecessary deaths. So very interested to see how easily they'll be able to breeze through some of those bosses now that we're in Fortified.
It is interesting indeed, Jack. Well, we are on game 2 of Workshop. This is match point for Pain for Fem if they win this one versus Gromnak. Take it away, guys.
All right, you're seeing the whole team getting all of those tonks in together underneath the hammer. And while usually these mobs can take quite a bit of kicks, interrupts, and crowd control in general to deal with, if you're able to grab them and get them underneath that hammer at the start, you can just completely obliterate them and have such an easy time. And that's just what they do, while also making sure they're baiting no mercy so it'll charge directly into another hammer for some extra damage on pull.
Right, so since it is a Sanguine dungeon, they drop all of the Sanguine under that one hammer, so they won't be able to use it in the beginning here for that no mercy.
Oh, it was a bad bait.
And yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what happened to that.
I think
thrust,
it went on to Fem. Yeah, I think it went on to Fem, but it ended up that he saw it and they shadow melded, maybe? If he's not running with... I guess he's not running with Dwarf or something like that. I don't know why else it wouldn't target him. I'm not sure if we're able to actually
look like
see
both
his
teams
race with our My Gear Live, but that's the only thing I could think of.
They do use their Bloodlust here, so they will get their second Bloodlust for the last boss when they fight it with the Awakened mobs. It looks like Gromnak Waiting Room is slightly ahead, using that hammer. So you can also use the hammer to hit the Pummeler. So there are 4 hammers in that boss room. You can use 3 to break the plating on the Pummeler, and then you can use the 4th one to hit once on the Pummeler. But you can be using it the whole time to hit the Tonk. So once the Tonk is dead, you can use that last hammer to do 1 million. It does about 1 million damage to the Pummeler.
Man, it makes it go so much more rapidly as we just saw here out of this. So you are seeing Gromnak Waiting Room getting off to a bit of an early head start as they do end up grabbing a Shroud. And I'm curious to see how many of these Living Wastes that they're going to be grabbing together, because if they're able to DPS everything very equally, they shouldn't really have to worry about it too much because we have these gigantic pillars that they're going to be able to line of sight around. I'd like to see some kind of yeah, I guess they did end up missing the binding shot there, so they weren't able to get everything off at once. So it looks like they are going to have some Living Waste detonations that they have to heal through here.
So I do want to chime in real quick, just as a reminder for chat. Pain for Fem started at 5 seconds later, so we are going to be just taking a closer look at their actual UIs, the timer there, just so you guys are aware of that.
All right, awesome. Good to know on that one. So we'll have to watch a little bit more closely on the timers. As thankfully everybody's running gotta go fast, so we'll be able to have that direct comparison. But it looked like that binding shot did end up missing, and oh, they have to watch out for the mega drill right there. Thankfully, they were able to stand a bit further back to get away from that waste
So
processing unit.
Gromnak pulled trash onto Cujo, and they did get an unfortunate sanguine under Cujo when he was casting his AoE, and he healed up to full. So that's one of the dangers of pulling trash onto the boss when he does a stationary cast for
I
long
think
periods of time.
I think that they were really banking on the binding shot grabbing all of the living wastes so that they wouldn't have to deal with any of them on the boss. But right now, I feel like it's just an absolute mess that they're going to have to watch for because I'm not sure about this. I haven't seen it myself with Sanguine, but do you know if Cujo jumps over one of the Sanguine puddles, if it'll be enough uptime for him to be healed?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
One of the things you can do with his jump as well is if it goes on a rogue or a hunter, he always jumps to the furthest target first. So you can use feign death or vanish, or I imagine shadow meld as well, to completely negate the jump. Because if he doesn't hit his first target, because they vanished or feign death, he'll stop his whole explosive leap completely.
Yeah, and you just saw it come out on the side of Swag Shot there, and making sure that he got that feigned death, so he didn't have to deal with it whatsoever. I also like seeing this positioning as well, as Divine's trying to get Cujo as deep into that box as possible to make sure that everybody's still going to be able to auto attack. Some people are able to get some abilities off, but it's pretty consistently been a tough challenge to make sure they get that to work. You saw Wolf Disco did run out; he got his vanish off as well. So once again, really clean execution there.
Yep, and now they have to make it past this conveyor belt, which could be the hardest part of the dungeon for some people, with the fire and falling off. But it looks like they are able to lightfoot and get past it pretty quickly.
I'm just waiting for somebody to fall. Just waiting for somebody to fall onto it. And I believe we mentioned that Pain for Fem is a couple seconds behind in their start time, so it doesn't look like they're too far off from their opponents onto this one. Very interested to start seeing how they're going to be able to catch up, as we do have one death on the side of Gromnak waiting room, as they do start getting themselves started with all of the guard trash right now.
And it looks like they are pulling it to that one corner, just probably for sanguine management, so that when the next wave of ads spawn, they will have a clean room to fight that trash wave.
Yeah, I like that they're just moving over to the edge of the room because I feel like all too often everyone just sticks to the middle, sticks to where they spawn, and doesn't really try to change anything from there. But when you have this second wave of mobs coming out, a lot of times they're just more slow, they're more clunky, and they're going to have their ground pound, for example. If they're not going anywhere when that goes out.
Right, and it looks like Paint for Femme is kiting their trash towards that edge of the room, like Gromnak did, as the mobs are dying. It looks like they're not too far behind, given that they started a little bit after Gromnak waiting room.
Yep, and last wave is going to be coming up for that Blastatron X80 on the side of Gromnak waiting room. And this trash overall, while we have had a couple of different, we have a couple of different gauntlets over the course of Legion or even BFA as well. It seems like this one has just been a little bit too easy, too straightforward, maybe. I mean, having to deal with the short outs, for example, from the defense boss in that second wave can be pretty deadly. But if you're able to have revival saved up, if people have cloak, people have other immunities to get rid of the debuff very quickly, darkness as well, there's a lot of tools to be able to counter it easily.
Right, and it looks like Gromnak waiting room is going to be playing the Void Weaver here. And while they're in this realm, they can just run past the maze or the traps in this next room without getting reset. They don't have to worry about it. They just have to run through. Since while you're in this realm, you are unaffected by the environment.
And that's one of the most interesting things too, is that with this Nyalotha realm, not only is the boss not going to affect you, but if you have any like bombs going off in Motherload, any other ground effects that are outside of the realm, they don't affect you at all. But one of the cool things is I believe most of the Mistweavers have been running with Chi G. But a lot of times on live keys, if you start running with statue, you can start having your statue persist through both realms. So if you quickly apply the statue, for example, if you quickly apply the statue to the tank before they go down, you can sit down, get a drink, and still have it channeling into them. So you do see statue on the side of Smock on this one. He was running, I believe, actually, Miwo was running with Chi G before.
And see Paint for Femme playing that Void Weaver as well, and Gromnek waiting room, pulling that trash pack into the third boss here, and hopefully they will handle the Sanguine fine here without getting the boss healed. The boss is pretty mobile. He doesn't stop to cast too much, and it looks like they're doing a good job of handling the Sanguine.
Yep, most definitely. And you are seeing how quickly they're able to focus down Sparkflux and really get him low very rapidly onto this one, because one of the most frustrating things on this boss is the any of the chainsaws or any of the gears that are flying all around the room, they never despawn. And you're constantly having to run around to take care of the inconspicuous plants, get those killed rapidly, and the fight just gets worse and worse and more trying as time goes on. So very cool to start seeing both teams really putting together these more risky groups. And thankfully, like you mentioned, the boss is really mobile, so Sanguine really isn't an issue at all.
And Paint for Femme are able to clean up that trash just as well as Gromnak, without healing the boss in the Sanguine. I guess one of the interesting things, like I wonder if teams will do in the future, is keeping one of the defenders alive that drops that shield and being able to stand in the shield and DPS the boss without having to move away from the saw blades.
I like that, but I'm also kind of terrified of it, because you start having that brief period where the shield just immediately goes down, but some of the effect is still there. So you think that you're safe.
Right, so you don't want to
And
get
then you
too
start
comfortable.
getting- Exactly. One cool thing is they're focusing down the spider tank, the second spider tank that they end up engaging with. That's because if you kill the one at the top of the stairs, at the top of the ramp, it starts the RP to let the ship come down early. So it's a good way to focus on one mob over another, get the RP started. They can immediately click and start moving on.
All right, and then once you land on the other side, you have to be careful not to click the the vehicle again and fly back, because I've seen that one too
Are you
many
speaking
times on
from
live.
personal experience?
No, I've seen people do it. I haven't done it myself yet.
Yet. Just start waiting until the highest key possible, the key upgrade that you need.
Right.
I do like seeing these larger attempts here, because with those defense bot Mark IIIs, we saw them previously in like the atrium, right as they got into the Mechagon City, of how much extra damage from the short out. But like you mentioned, when they have that shield up, that 75%, 80% damage reduction is just so massive that they don't even have to worry too much about getting all those dispels off, as long as they constantly have a shield that they're able to go.
All right, and I expect you see Paint for Femme doing a similar pull here. With a linear dungeon like this, and very little trash. There's not too much variety that you can do to meet your trash count as well. So they'll pretty much have to pull almost every trash in the dungeon, minus a couple of packs.
Yeah, those are they think they're just skipping this one. Yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna be very surprised if they were going to end up engaging with it, because I think they had enough obelisks to get the remaining trash percentage.
Right.
And as you mentioned, with only a few things that they're able to skip, that would have to be.
Yeah. So we'll see how they handle the three obelisks here. They have the Blood of the Corruptor, they have the Tank Buster, and they have the Fear Mob. I imagine we'll see them focus down the Spirit Breaker Awaken Mob first, so that the tank doesn't die, just for safety, and then go for the Fear Mob.
That's right. And there's already so many different ground effects that they have to watch out for. I mean, I think they're going to be doing like 2 or 3 circles around this entire room just to be able to keep everybody alive onto this one, because the extra tank pressure that they have to watch out for with having all of these mobs on top. And you mentioned at the beginning of the run, having that tank buster, the Spirit Breaker on the tank while he's getting clobbered with magic damage, just so much to deal with.
Right, and one of the things that you'll see teams do when they run Demon Hunter is the Demon Hunter can take the first Spirit Break so that the tank doesn't have to take it. They can use their meta to dodge the ability basically during the meta animation, so that the tank does have a bit of um, time before he has to eat a Spirit Break.
Really? So Blade Dance wouldn't work. It's just the meta animation.
Right, so you can use basically the meta immune to eat one.
That's pretty awesome. And they quickly just absolutely obliterate all of these mobs. And it goes to show how well prepared these guys have been for this dungeon. And you mentioned it at the start of the run. They were just very confident in what they needed to do, and they got it done here as they're about to transition into phase 2.
Yeah, and they had a pretty clean run overall. Oh, they have one death there, unfortunately, to Corruption and the Grievous while they were stunned from the boss transition. But they do have a battle res to get Wolf Disco back up.
Yeah, but I'm always interested to see, especially with heavy melee groups, how these guys are positioning, because the boss's hitbox when he goes into his Omega Buster is so massive that they just have a lot of room to work with, but it's also tough to be able to have eyes on all 4 of the magnets that are jumping around the room and see where they're all going to be going.
Right, so they have to make sure that they don't get cleaved by the Giga Zap when it's targeting one person, and so they have to manage the Giga Zap and dodge the balls that are charging towards them. And it looks like
And
Pain for Fem is cleaning up.
Yep, Pain for Fem is cleaning up, and as we mentioned previously, they're a couple seconds behind in the start. They were not perfectly synced together at the beginning of this dungeon, so we'll have to compare times at the very end. But you're seeing Omega Buster is just getting absolutely obliterated on the side of Gromnak waiting room, as Mock's doing an excellent job taking his time dealing with a lot of the Grievous here and making sure he does a good job prioritizing instead of trying to get everything topped off immediately. I've been seeing a lot of Rising Mist on like live keys, but with Thunder Focus T, with Focus Thunder, he's getting that extra use out of Thunder Focus T, and he's been using it to really crank up his damage, and that's been insanely helpful for them as they do end up killing the Omega Buster. And I believe that 5 second, 6 second grace period has passed with Gromnak waiting room tying up the series 1-1. Deal with certain emissaries, like certain packs with certain emissaries, whether it was the Tides emissary or Void emissary, you might want to just skip past. You might just want to Shadow Meld instead. But now it's a lot easier for them to deal with, and they don't have to worry about as big of like variations of combinations of mobs, for example, because you'd start seeing, maybe this week there's a Tides emissary here or there's a Void emissary there, and those different things would make pulls substantially more difficult. Now we just have consistency across the board, and as you're seeing right here, they're blasting some packs.
Yeah, well, we are about 20 seconds into this 1-1 series. This is going to be match point Gromnak versus Pain for Fem. Take it away, guys.
All right, with both packs decimated, we are seeing Gromnak waiting room quickly going into the first obelisk, while on the other side, we are seeing Pain for Fem just moving on ahead. I think they might be just getting a Shadow Meld.
Yeah, it does look like Gromnak waiting room is going to be going for the safe play of killing the Void Weaver here, instead of having to fight it with Yasma. And Pain for Fem, they did do a slightly different pull. Pain for Fem did not play the Colossus like Gromnak waiting room did. So we're gonna see where they make up the trash later.
Yep, and you are seeing Priest's Alunza getting pulled on the side of Pain for Fem with all of the trash in the room. Be very interesting to start watching as they're taking down all of the mobs, and also making sure they keep an eye on which of the pools they can be collecting to be able to deal with any of those transfusions. They do get a really good paralysis up onto the first mob there, so that it's not going to be impacting them in any way, because it seems like it has almost too much HP from the mobs that Alunza will spawn. It just takes up so much extra time to kill it. So much easier just to get a crowd control and ignore it.
Right, and at this key level, they can kill Priestess Alunza within 2 transfusions. So they have a blind and they have a paralysis from the monk to CC the 2 mobs. The ads that will come out, so they don't have to deal with them at all. If they get a third one, that would mean their DPS is a little bit behind, or they didn't get the bloods in time, and then they would have to slow that third ad with possibly ring or some kind of stun.
Yep, and you are seeing it going down on the side of Pain for Fem as Gromnak waiting room is dropping down to 40% on Alunza after that first transfusion. Pain for Fem are going to be getting ready for another big pull. And we saw this out of Method EU as well, where they quickly just open up the gate, grab those mobs, had the rogue run ahead and snap everything on this bridge section, but not that fall, as we are seeing it Shellet drop down on the side of Pain for Fem. That aerial I-beam was his own downfall, really.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate, but it looks like they did pull the middle pack with that Dinomancer and the 2
that's even more
dinosaurs as
risky.
well. But it looks like they are able to handle it without Shella for now, but it is going a little bit slower. Razan has already passed by, so we'll see when they decide to jump off. Maybe they'll just meet Shella down there instead of him coming back up at this point.
I was going to see where it would be easiest for him to be able to run back. I mean, he does have Shadow Meld working in his favor, but it's just the pain to try to get into the right area at the right time. And you're seeing Gromnak waiting room doing a very similar pull as well, and hitting that timing so that you're going to be able to have Razan beneath you at the very right moment. I think, if I remember correctly, you were in the same position here that we're seeing Gromnak waiting room, and then you ended up jumping down in one of the tournaments and using a racing flag to make sure everything snapped down with you.
Right, so if you use the mobs will snap down wherever you land, so you can use Heroic Leap as a prot warrior to basically just land and drop them and snap them immediately. right where you jump off. So you can use that also to not take fall damage. And
Ah.
one of the things with a Talazar on this side of the room, those pillars or those things along the walls that you would think would LOS, the fear does not work like it does on the other side for some reason. So they happen to eat that fear there since they didn't get Rizan close enough to the stairs to use that line of sight spot.
For some reason, and I guess they just didn't have revival at that point to be able to make up for it. Well, I guess it was just guaranteed that Smok was going to get feared, so even if he had it, he wouldn't be able to.
Right.
That's a lot of reanimated rafters as well. I guess that was just because of their positioning, because they're mispositioned. That Swag ended up having to kind of kite them through a lot of the extra mobs there.
Right. It also gives them extra raptors for that DK to get huge
Fester
wounds
might
back
up as
for his
well.
Fester might. And we see Pain for Fem catching up in the boss here. Gromnak waiting room is slightly ahead in the boss damage.
Yeah, we were able to see Scheller just be able to get back in with the group, but right now I think they have just about even in terms of their trash percentage, around 64% on almost both sides. I think Gromnak has about 55. I'm able to see the POV correctly, so not too great of a difference. There's going to be a couple large snap pulls left before they have to go into like Volcall as an example. So really, it seems a lot more equal than we've seen out of previous matchups where one team just got an early lead.
Right. I think the difference was so far as Gromnak waiting room they did the Colossus in the beginning. They did not do the Dinomancer with the two dinosaurs. So that's where the difference was. And I guess it puts them about close to the same percent.
And I don't know if we ended up seeing. I think we saw both teams end up pulling the middle pack in there. They just kind of change it in later. How has that worked for a lot of these teams? It seems like they set up a specific delay to make sure that they didn't have that middle pack pulled right away. They just wanted to have a bit of a delay, a bit of a wait, and then they pulled it in later. Like Gromnak, I think looks like they're going to be doing it here.
Yeah, I think they do all of the remaining Saurids. So there's 3 Skyscreamers. I'm not sure if I saw the middle pack in there just yet, but they'll probably chain this into that um undead side just before Volcall. But they end up finishing it off because you don't want to have to kick 3 Skyscreamers and kick the unstable hexes from these Witch Doctors. So it's a
Yeah,
smart and
that's
safe
a
play.
lot of extra pressure for them to deal with. Yeah, we are seeing Pain for Fem again, just clearing up some more of the trash in the middle as they're moving themselves. Again, same position and getting into that same type of area. So they're a little bit behind in Gromnak waiting room in terms of trash percentage. But it starts seeing as I don't think that Gromnak's going to need to deal with that end pack. They need some bit of trash percentage, but I'm not sure if it's going to be that middle pack though.
Yeah, I'm gonna check one of the other um, POVs to see if you can see their percentage. But it looks like so it looks like they are at 94.4%. So they just need the 3 awaken mobs on Yasma. So they are
Okay.
good on trash right now.
Yeah, but you're seeing it 92% on the side of Pain for Fem as they do just run ahead. They get that sap. They get I believe they have the Shadow Meld up for it as well, just to be able to get out of the way. Okay, they had the blind, then the rogue ran ahead first, and then drew aggro and vanished. So that way they didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I imagine after Volcall, they'll just stay mounted and run all the way to Yasma and then use their Shadow Melts to drop any combat. And then, as close as this dungeon is, it's probably going to just come down to Yasma and the 3 Awakened mobs and see which team, if Gromnak can pull it off cleanly.
Do you think this is going to be the most challenging boss fight to deal with extra obelisks? Or I guess Korg would be really close as well.
Right. I think, well, this boss, because you have the spiders and then you have the interrupt that you need to do on the boss as well, poses a challenge. But I think most teams at this key level should be able to handle it. Especially the thing with Gromnak waiting room is they took out the Void Weaver already, so they don't have to worry about interrupts on all the awakened mobs. They can just focus their damage on the awakened mobs and just have the tank interrupt Yasma, so they don't have to. That's not an extra threat for them. Whereas Pain for Fem, they will still have to interrupt that Void Weaver on Yasma.
Oh, that's true. And being able to start timing, when people are going to be having kicks at the ready and just one extra miss kick, it shouldn't be the end of the world. But if they have a lot of damage going off, or it's just like a missed time whenever they have like the soul flay on top of it, that could be incredibly.
Right, and I guess depending on how much corruption these players are playing with, if they get like a Grand
Yeah.
Illusion at the same time, or if they get feared into a spider, or if they are planning on eating the Dark Fury just to do damage, and then they get hit by the Void Weaver, it could be a lot of trouble.
How do you feel about the corruption the tanks have been running? I think most of them have been just having maybe one small thing from beyond, if at all. Do you think that's appropriate for them, or do you think there's some instances where they want to run even more aggressive than that?
I think that's appropriate for them because one of the big things aside from the damage is the snare. Because if you get slowed while you're trying to do a big pull, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble if you don't have that Tiger Glass from the healer or your avatar to break out of that snare or your cloak. So it could put you in a really bad spot and slow down the pull, or even slow you down from moving out of stuff like Dark Fury or the spiders here.
Yeah, I love seeing the transcend that Mock's dropping right now to make sure that he's able to instantly port to the stairs when he needs to. I mean, we're seeing the 3 obelisks coming up really quickly. I really like to see that crackling Jade Lightning to start, bringing the mobs in for one, but also making sure that he's able to get that physical debuff because they have to run for that soul flay so rapidly. So you have that awkward moment of having to run in or run just out with the soul flay, then run quickly back in to be able to help out with the rest of the group. And you did see him just pop Fort Brew and just stand in the crush in the middle of the room, just so that he didn't have to add any extra trouble to it.
Right, and he's able to keep them alive and healthy with lust and his way of the crane up. And it looks like they were able to kill Samrek the Beckoner, so the awakened mob that does fear, pretty quickly, so they don't have to deal with too many of those. He looks like he did use his revival to get rid of the first set of fears.
That's right. As they get themselves running into the corner once again, they got to be careful here because not only are having the oozes, but they have the spiders all over the place. They've already done a full revolution around the world, and at this point, they're just running for their lives, trying to be able to stay out of it. And like you mentioned, this is what's coming down to the dungeon. Is Pain for Femme is doing the exact same. Well, they do have to deal with the caster mob instead, actually.
Right, and it looks like those awakened mobs are staying a little bit longer alive for Pain for Femme as they have to get the interrupts and move out of the Dark Furies and the Defiled Grounds. Um, it looks like Gromnak has cleaned up all of the awakened mobs and just have to deal with Yasma now.
That's got to be an absolute sigh of relief for them as they start getting back for the soul flay and start just focusing regularly on the boss here, as they still have the blood of the corruptor on the side of Pain for Femme to be dealing with here, as they're doing whatever they can to start kiting out some of these ads, but they're getting very, very close.
Yeah, it is getting very close. Pain for Femme did actually do a pretty good job with handling all of the awakened mobs on the boss, but I'm not sure that's quite enough given the difference in time here. Gromnak Waiting Room is about like 30% ahead in boss damage.
That they are, and we do have them all perfectly aligned right now. So for this one, it is Gromnak Waiting Room's dungeon to beat and dungeon to take right now, as I believe they also did better on the side of Gromnak Waiting Room in time trials around 10:15 for that. So this is a bit slower. It's about to hit that exact 12-minute mark, but still being able to watch out for a lot of those dangerous awakened mobs. They did an incredibly strong job being able to seal up this series 2-1.